Dr. Hanul stood before the United Earth Council, her hands shaking as she prepared to speak. The vast chamber was filled with representatives from every human colony, every military branch, every corporation that mattered. They were all here to judge her findings. 300 years of research, decades of her own life, all leading to this moment. She pressed the button. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a star map with a single point marked in red. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I found them," she said. "The Valoran. I found where they came from." The room erupted. Some counselors leaned forward with interest. Others frowned and whispered to their neighbors. Council Chairman Park raised his hand for silence. "Dr. Hanul," he said carefully, "many people have claimed to find the Valoran. All of them were wrong. What makes your discovery different?" Hanul had prepared for this question her entire life. She brought up another display, showing fragments of old technology, pieces of metal and crystal that glowed faintly in the hologram. "These artifacts were recovered from the battle sites of the First Contact War," she explained. "For 30 years I studied them. The technology has a unique signature, a pattern in how it processes energy. I traced that pattern across 300 years of space exploration data. Every reported sighting, every strange sensor reading, every unexplained phenomenon. And they all point to the same place." The star map zoomed in, showing a region of space humanity had marked as unexplored. Too far, too difficult to reach, too unimportant for colonization. Hanul's red marker pulsed at its center. "The Valoran homeworld is here," she said. "I stake my reputation on it." Counselor Yoon spoke up from the back row. She was old, one of the few counselors who remembered when the First Contact War was still taught in schools as recent history rather than ancient events. "Even if you are right," Yoon said slowly, "why should we care? The Valoran helped us 3 centuries ago. They left. They clearly did not want contact. Why disturb them now?" Other counselors nodded. Hanul had expected this too. She took a deep breath. "Because we owe them everything," she said quietly. "Without the Valoran, humanity would not exist. Earth would be a dead world. Every person alive today, all 50 billion humans across 200 colonies, only exist because the Valoran chose to help us." "That was 300 years ago," another counselor argued. "We have thanked them. We built memorials. We named ships after them. What more can we do?" Hanul's eyes hardened. She had one card left to play. She pulled up an audio file, one she had discovered in an old military archive. Most people had never heard it. "This is the last transmission from Earth Command before the Valoran arrived," she said. "I want you to listen." The audio crackled to life. The voice was distorted, broken by static and fear. But the words were clear enough. "This is Earth Command to all human forces. The Zathian fleet has broken through the orbital defense. Civilian evacuation is incomplete. We estimate enemy bombardment will begin in 2 hours. To any ship that receives this message, remember us. Remember that we tried. Humanity dies today, but we fought until the end. This is Admiral Chen signing off." Silence filled the chamber. Even the oldest counselors looked shaken. Hanul let the moment stretch before speaking again. 6 minutes after that transmission, she said, the Valoran arrived. 12 ships. Just 12. They appeared between Earth and the Zathian fleet. They did not ask who we were. They did not demand payment. They simply fought. 3 of their ships were destroyed, saving our planet. Thousands of Valoran died so that humans could live. Hanul looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many counselors as she could. "I am not asking you to care about ancient history," she said. "I am asking you to remember that we exist because someone chose to save us. And now I have found them. We can finally say thank you properly. We can offer them the same help they gave us. Is that really something we want to refuse?" The vote took an hour. In the end, it was unanimous. Humanity would send an expedition to the Valoran homeworld. They would bring gifts, technology, offers of alliance. Most importantly, they would bring gratitude. Commander Tae-hyun received the news in his quarters aboard the UES Retribution. He was 52 years old, a veteran of 3 border conflicts, and he commanded the most powerful warship in the human fleet. The message from Earth Command was brief. He was to lead the expedition to find the Valoran. His second officer, Captain Jae-won, entered the room moments later. Jae-won was younger, ambitious, and usually very practical. He did not look happy about their new orders. "Sir," Jae-won said carefully, "I understand the historical significance, but is this really the best use of our resources? We have actual threats to deal with. The border tensions with the Korath are getting worse every month, and we are going to take our best ships on what amounts to a thank you tour." Tae-hyun looked at his officer for a long moment. Then he pulled up a photo on his desk display. It showed 2 people, a man and a woman, standing in front of a ruined city. They looked tired and scared but alive. "My grandparents," Tae-hyun said quietly. "Taken 3 days after the First Contact War ended. They were in Seoul when the Zathian bombardment started. They should have died. Half the city did die. But they lived because the Valoran drew fire away from civilian centers. My grandfather used to tell me stories about watching those alien ships get torn apart to save humans they had never met." He looked up at Jae-won. "I exist because the Valoran chose to act when they could have fled. My children exist. You exist because somewhere in your family tree someone survived that war. So yes, Captain, this is the best use of our resources. Because if we forget the people who saved us, what does that make us?" Jae-won said nothing. After a moment, he nodded and left. The fleet departed 3 weeks later, 12 ships, matching the number of Valoran vessels that had saved Earth so long ago. The lead ship was the UES Retribution, with Tae-hyun in command. Dr. Han-Yul was aboard as their guide. Also traveling with them was Ambassador Dal-Neem, an elderly woman chosen to speak for humanity when they met the Valoran. The journey took 2 months. During that time, Han-Yul gave lectures to the crew about Valoran culture, what little was known. The Valoran were a species that believed in helping others. They had intervened in 47 different civilizations throughout their history. They gave technology, shared knowledge, and asked for nothing in return. After each intervention, they vanished, leaving the saved species to grow on their own. Why? A young engineer named Hyejin asked during one lecture. Why help people and then leave? Why not stay and build alliances? Han-Yul smiled sadly. Because they believed that gratitude given freely is worth more than alliances built on debt. They saved species and then left so those species could thrive without feeling obligated. The Valoran thought gratitude should be a gift, not a burden. On the final day of the journey, Tae-hyun called a ship-wide meeting. He stood before his crew, all 800 of them, and spoke simply. "Tomorrow we arrive at the coordinates Dr. Han-Yul provided," he said. "We do not know what we will find. Maybe a thriving civilization, maybe nothing at all. But whatever we discover, remember why we came. We came to honor a debt. We came to say thank you to the species that gave us our future. Be proud of that." The crew cheered. Even Jae-won, standing beside Tae-hyun, felt something stir in his chest, as maybe this mission mattered after all. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel the next morning. The sensors immediately began scanning the system ahead. Tae-hyun sat in his command chair, watching the data stream across his displays. Han-Yul stood beside him, her face tense with anticipation. The sensor officer called out, "Sir, I am reading a planetary system. 3 planets in the habitable zone, multiple orbital structures, signs of advanced technology." Han-Yul let out a breath she had been holding for years. "It is them," she whispered. "The Valoran. We found them." But then the sensor officer spoke again, and his voice was wrong. Too quiet, too shocked. "Sir," he said slowly, "I am reading debris fields. Massive ones. The orbital structures are destroyed. And there are warships in orbit. Unknown configuration, they are firing on the planet below." The main view screen activated, showing the Valoran system. Everyone on the bridge fell silent. The 3rd planet was scarred with impacts. Its cities were burning. Shattered space stations tumbled through orbit like broken toys. and surrounding it all were hundreds of dark, angular warships, their weapons flashing as they bombarded the dying world below. Tae-hyun stood slowly from his chair, his hands clenched into fists. They had come to thank the species that saved them. Instead, they had arrived just in time to watch them die. Commander Tae-hyun did not hesitate. His voice cut through the shocked silence on the bridge like a blade. All ships battle stations. Weapons hot. Prepare for combat. Captain Jaewon turned to him sharply. Sir, we do not know who those ships belong to. We do not know the situation. Should we not try to communicate first? Tae-hyun pointed at the viewscreen at the burning planet below. Someone is killing the Valoran. That is all I need to know. Prepare to engage. The human fleet moved forward, weapons powering up. The unknown warships noticed them immediately. A transmission came through. The language unfamiliar, but the translation software worked quickly. A harsh grating voice filled the bridge. Unknown vessels, this is Warlord Thrakus of the Kryn Dominion. You are entering a military exclusion zone. Identify yourselves and state your purpose or be destroyed. Tae-hyun opened the channel himself. His voice was cold and hard. This is Commander Tae-hyun of the United Earth Fleet. 300 years ago, the Valoran saved my species from extinction. They asked for nothing in return. Today, humanity repays that debt. This world is now under our protection. Leave immediately or face the consequences. For a moment, there was silence. Then Thrakus laughed. The sound was ugly and mocking. Protection? Debt? How quaint. The Valoran are weak. Their philosophy of helping others made them targets. We are simply finishing what should have happened long ago. And you, whoever you are fools to stand in our way. You cannot stop us. Tae-hyun smiled, though there was no warmth in it. We will see about that. All ships open fire. The space between the fleets erupted in light. Human weapons, refined over 3 centuries of constant improvement, tore into the Kryn blockade. The Kryn were not prepared for this. They had been attacking a defenseless planet. They were not ready to fight a fleet that had come prepared for war. The battle was fierce but brief. 3 Kryn warships exploded in the first minute. 5 more took critical damage. The Kryn fleet, which had numbered over 30 vessels, suddenly found itself fighting for survival against 12 human ships that moved with practiced precision. Thrakus broadcast one final message before his fleet retreated into faster-than-light travel. His voice carried rage and disbelief. This is not over. The Kryn Dominion does not forget. We will return with more ships. Your intervention means nothing. Tae-hyun watched the enemy ships vanish from sensors. Good, let them return. We will be waiting. With the immediate threat gone, Tae-hyun turned his attention to the planet below. Prepare landing parties. Medical teams, engineers, disaster relief supplies. Dr. Hanul, Ambassador Dalnim, you are with me. We are going down there. The shuttles descended through smoke-filled skies. Hanul stared out the window, her heart breaking at what she saw. The Valoran homeworld had once been beautiful, according to the old records. Now it was a landscape of destruction. Cities lay in ruins. Forests burned. And among the wreckage, she could see movement. Survivors. They landed near what appeared to be a refugee camp. Thousands of Valoran had gathered here, sheltering in the ruins of what might have once been a grand building. As the humans emerged from their shuttles, the Valoran stopped what they were doing and stared. Hanul got her first real look at the species that had saved humanity. The Valoran were tall and slender, with skin that seemed to glow faintly from within. But most of the ones she saw now had that glow dimmed to almost nothing. They looked tired, hurt, hopeless. An elderly Valoran approached them slowly. She moved with difficulty, leaning on a staff. Her skin barely glowed at all, just the faintest flicker of light beneath the surface. But her eyes were sharp and intelligent. I am Matriarch Kale, she said in perfect English. The translation device was not even necessary. You are not Kryn, your ships fought them. Why? Ambassador Dalnim stepped forward. She had been chosen for this mission, partly because she was old enough to remember, when her own grandmother told stories of the first contact. War. Stories passed down through generations about mysterious, alien ships that appeared when all hope was lost. Matriarch Kale, Dalnim said gently. My name is Dalnim. I am here to speak for humanity. 300 years ago, your people came to Earth. We were dying. A hostile species was destroying our world. You saved us. You fought for us. You died for us. And then you left before we could even thank you properly. Kale's eyes widened. You are human? From Earth? Yes, Dalnim said. We spent 3 centuries looking for you. We wanted to say thank you. We wanted to repay what you gave us, and now we are here. The matriarch stared at them for a long moment. Then slowly her skin began to glow brighter. Not much, but enough to notice. When she spoke again, her voice shook. You remembered us, she whispered. After all this time, you remembered. We never forgot, Taehyun said firmly. Humanity does not forget the people who saved us. Tell us what happened here. Tell us how we can help. Kyle led them through the refugee camp as she explained. The Valoran had always been a peaceful species. For thousands of years, they had traveled the galaxy helping others. They gave aid without asking for anything back. Most species were grateful. Some even became friends. But a few saw the Valoran as weak. Easy targets. The Kryn Dominion believes that mercy is weakness, Kale said bitterly. They see our willingness to help others as a disease that must be eliminated. For 50 years, they have hunted us. They destroyed our colony worlds one by one. They killed our children. This world, Valora Prime, is all that remains. We expected to die here. We thought no one would come to help us, just as no one has helped us for the past 50 years. Why did no one help you? Dr. Hanuel asked, horrified. You saved so many species. Where were they? A bitter laugh came from behind them. A younger Valoran male stepped forward. He was tall and strong, his skin glowing more brightly than most of the others, but his expression was hard. They were afraid, the male said. I am Sentinel Voros. I command what little military we have left, and I can tell you exactly where all the species we saved were when we needed them. They hid. They claimed they could not help. They said it was too dangerous to fight the Kryn. They abandoned us. He turned to face the humans directly. His eyes were hard. And now you are here, humans from Earth. You drove off the Kryn blockade. You speak of debts and repayment. But words are easy. When the Kryn return with more ships, will you still be here? Or will you be like all the others, full of promises but empty of action? Taehyun met his gaze steadily. We are not like the others. Point us to what needs defending, show us what needs rebuilding, and watch what happens when humanity honors its debts. Within hours, the human fleet transformed. Ships that had been weapons of war became tools of salvation. Engineers swarmed across the planet, setting up generators, water purification systems, and medical stations. Human doctors worked alongside Valoran healers. Construction drones raised shelter after shelter. Young engineer Hyojin led a team to repair the planet's defense grid. She found Valoran technology that was 300 years old mixed with newer salvage. As she worked, an elderly Valoran technician watched her. This design, the Valoran said slowly, pointing at one of the human power cores. It is based on our old work. I recognize the pattern, Hyojin smiled. Yes, after you saved us, we studied everything you left behind. We spent 3 centuries improving on your designs. Everything we are, everything we have, we built on the foundation you gave us. The Valoran technician's skin began to glow brighter. Then we did not give our lives for nothing. Your species survived. You thrived. You grew strong. And now you have come to help us. Now we repay what you gave us, Hyojin said simply. Dr. Ha Newell spent her time in what remained of the Valoran archives. Scholar Theron, a young Valoran who had studied human development from afar, showed her the records. Together they pieced together the full story of what the Valoran had done for Earth. It was worse than Hanuel had known. The Valoran had not just fought in the First Contact War. They had intercepted a planet-killer weapon meant for Earth. 3 of their ships had deliberately absorbed the blast, sacrificing themselves to save a world they had only just discovered. The personal logs of those crew members made Hanuel weep. They knew they were going to die. But they went anyway because humans deserved a chance to live. Why? Hanuel asked Theron through her tears. Why did they sacrifice so much for strangers? Theron's skin glowed softly. Because that is what civilization means. Not technology. Not power. But the willingness to help those who cannot help themselves. Your species was dying. My ancestors chose to save you. And now you have chosen to save us. The cycle continues. On the 3rd day after their arrival, the long-range sensors detected a massive fleet approaching. Over 300 Kryn warships were coming. Enough firepower to sterilize the planet completely. Thrakus had kept his promise. He was returning to finish what he started. Taehyun stood on the bridge of the Retribution and looked at his crew. They all knew what was coming. They were outnumbered 25 to 1, but not one person suggested retreat. They had come to repay a debt, and they would see it through to the end, whatever that end might be. Commander Tae-hyun received the message from Earth Command in his ready room. He read it twice, making sure he understood correctly. Then he deleted it without responding. Captain Jae-won entered moments later. "Sir, did you receive the transmission from Earth?" "I did. They ordered us to retreat. Reinforcements are coming, but they will not arrive for 10 days. Command says we should fall back and wait for support." Tae-hyun looked at his second officer. "What do you think we should do, Captain?" Jae-won stood straighter. "I think retreat was never an option, sir. The Kryn will be here in 3 days. If we leave, the Valoran die. We came here to honor a debt." "I say we honor it properly," Tae-hyun smiled. The younger man had changed over these past days. They all had. "I agree. Prepare the fleet for battle, and send a message to the Kryn. I want them to know exactly who they are fighting." The message went out on all frequencies, broadcast wide enough that half the galaxy would eventually hear it. "This is Commander Tae-hyun of the United Earth Fleet, speaking to Warlord Thrakus of the Kryn Dominion. 300 years ago, the Valoran stood between humanity and extinction. They fought for us. They died for us. They gave us our future. Today, humanity returns that gift. This world is under our protection. Come if you dare. We will be waiting." On the planet below, engineer Hee-jin worked frantically on her most ambitious project yet. She had combined human technology with ancient Valoran designs recovered from the archives. The result was a planetary shield generator powerful enough to protect the entire surface from orbital bombardment. The problem was that it was experimental, untested. It might work perfectly, or it might explode and take half the continent with it. "How confident are you?" Sentinel Voros asked, watching her work. He had been assigned to protect the shield generator. Hai-jin wiped sweat from her forehead. 60% chance it works. 30% chance it does nothing. 10% chance we all die in a massive explosion. Those are not good odds. They are better than 0%, which is what you have without it. She looked up at him. 300 years ago, your people took a worse chance to save mine. I will take this risk to save yours." Voros's skin glowed brighter. He had been suspicious of humans at first, cynical. But watching them work these past days, seeing them pour resources and lives into saving his species without asking for anything back, had changed him. These humans meant what they said. The Kryn fleet arrived exactly when predicted. Over 300 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a coordinated formation. They filled the space around Valora Prime like a dark swarm. Warlord Thrakus broadcast immediately. His voice dripped with contempt. "I received your message, human. Very noble. Very touching. But nobility does not win wars. You are outnumbered 25 to 1. Your ships are good, but they cannot overcome such odds. I will give you one chance. Surrender the Valoran. Leave this system, and I will let you live. Refuse, and your species will learn the cost of interfering in Kryn affairs." Tae-hyun's response was immediate. "We refuse. This world is under humanity's protection. If you want it, come and take it." Thrakus laughed. "So be it. You will die for aliens who can give you nothing. Your sacrifice is meaningless." "That is where you are wrong," Tae-hyun said quietly. "Our sacrifice means everything. All ships engage the enemy." The battle began. The Kryn came in waves, trying to overwhelm the human fleet through sheer numbers, but Tae-hyun had spent 3 days preparing. His ships moved in perfect coordination, covering each other, focusing fire on critical targets. The humans fought like they had never fought before. They were not defending territory or resources. They were defending the species that had saved them. They were proving that humanity remembered its debts. Captain Jae-won commanded one of the escort ships. He watched as a Kryn cruiser broke through their formation, heading for the planet below. Without hesitation, he ordered his ship to intercept. The collision tore both vessels apart, but the Kryn ship never reached the surface. Jae-won's crew evacuated in escape pods. As he drifted in space, watching the battle continue, he thought about what Tae-hyun had said. What would we be if we forgot those who saved us? Now he knew the answer. We would be nothing worth being. On the surface, Kryn ground forces attempted to land near the shield generator. Human Marines and Valoran defenders fought side by side. The battle was brutal and close. A young human soldier, barely 20 years old, found himself fighting next to Sentinel Voros. The Kryn were everywhere. They were being overwhelmed. A Kryn warrior broke through the line. His weapon was aimed at Voros. The sentinel was focused on another enemy and did not see the threat. The young soldier did not think. He simply moved. He threw himself between Voros and the weapon. The blast tore through his armor and into his body. He collapsed and Voros caught him as he fell. Why? Voros demanded, pressing his hands against the wound even though he knew it was too late. Why would you do this? The soldier smiled weakly. Blood stained his lips. Because you matter. Your people matter. Worth it. The boy died in his arms. Voros looked down at the young face. No older than his own son had been before the Kryn killed him. And he finally understood. These humans were not here out of obligation. Not out of politics. They were here because they genuinely cared. They would die for his people the same way his people had died for them 300 years ago. The tears that ran down his face glowed in the darkness. In space, the battle reached its critical moment. The human fleet was battered. Half their ships were destroyed or crippled. But they had taken down over 100 Kryn vessels. The Kryn were beginning to realize that these humans would not break. Thrakus, furious at the resistance, led his flagship directly toward the UES Retribution. He wanted to kill the human commander personally. Tae-hyun saw him coming. His ship was damaged, weapons nearly depleted, shields failing. He could try to retreat to survive, but that would leave the planet vulnerable. He made his decision quickly. All crew evacuate to the remaining ships. I'm staying behind, his crew protested. The bridge officers refused to leave. Tae-hyun had to order them at gunpoint before they finally abandoned ship. He watched the escape pods launch one by one, carrying his people to safety. Then he turned the Retribution toward Thrakus's flagship and engaged the engines at maximum power. Thrakus realized what was happening too late. He tried to turn, to evade, but the Retribution was too close and moving too fast. The last thing Tae-hyun heard was the Kryn warlord's voice filled with disbelief. You would die for them? For aliens who can give you nothing in return? Tae-hyun smiled as he answered. That is what makes us human. That is what makes us worthy of what they gave us. The explosion lit up the sky. Both ships vanished in a ball of fire, but the rest of the Kryn fleet faltered. Their leader was dead. The humans impossibly were still fighting. And then something impossible happened. New ships began appearing at the edge of the system. Not human ships. Not Kryn. Ships from dozens of different species, all converging on Valora Prime. Matriarch Kale stood on the surface, watching the sky light up with new arrivals. Scholar Theron appeared beside her, his face wet with tears. They came, he whispered. All the species we saved. They heard what humanity was doing. They were ashamed. And they came. Transmissions flooded the channels. Species the Valoran had helped decades ago, centuries ago. Each one offered the same message. The humans had reminded them of their debts. They would not abandon the Valoran again. The Kryn fleet, suddenly outnumbered and facing a coalition of angry species who had all been saved by the Valoran, made the only rational choice. They retreated. Some ships were too slow and were destroyed, but the majority fled into faster-than-light travel, leaving Valora Prime behind. The battle was over. Humanity had lost 6 ships and thousands of people, including Commander Tae-hyun. But the Valoran were saved. Ambassador Dal-Neem stood beside Matriarch Kale as they watched the combined fleet establish defensive positions around the planet. Both were silent for a long time. Finally, Kyle spoke. Her voice was soft but filled with emotion. We saved your species because we believed in your potential. Today, you proved we were right. You did not just save us. You reminded the entire galaxy what civilization truly means. Dal-Neem looked up at the stars, at the ships that now guarded this world. Commander Tae-hyun said we came to honor a debt. But I think we did more than that. We showed everyone what gratitude looks like when it is real. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, people who had been saved by the Valoran long ago watched the recordings of the battle and felt shame. Shame that they had not acted sooner. Shame that it took humanity's example to remind them of their own debts. But also hope. Hope that perhaps civilization could be better than it had been. Hope that gratitude and honor were not just ancient words but values worth fighting for. 6 months after the battle, Valora Prime had changed. The ruins were being cleared away. New buildings rose where old ones had fallen. The sky was no longer dark with smoke, and everywhere humans and Valoran worked together, building something better than what had been lost. Captain Jae-won, now promoted to commander after Tae-hyun's death, walked through the reconstruction zone. He still was not comfortable with the promotion. Every time someone called him commander, he thought of Taehyun. He thought of the sacrifice his mentor had made. A memorial was being built at the crash site where the Retribution and the Kryn flagship had collided. Valoran and human workers labored side by side to create something worthy of the sacrifice. Jaewon stopped to watch them work. Sentinel Voros approached, his skin glowing more brightly than it had in years. The Valoran warrior had changed since the battle. The cynicism was gone, replaced by something warmer. "Commander Jaewon," Voros said, "I wanted to thank you again for what your people did." "What Commander Taehyun did?" Jaewon shook his head. "We only did what was right. What you did for us 300 years ago." "No," Voros said firmly. "You did more. You reminded the galaxy what honor means. Look around you. 50 different species are helping rebuild our world, all because humanity showed them the way." It was true. After the battle, ships had kept arriving. Species that the Valoran had saved over the centuries, all coming to help. Some brought supplies, others brought workers. A few brought entire fleets to help defend against future Kryn attacks. The galaxy had watched humanity honor its debt, and it had been ashamed. Dr. Hanul and scholar Theron had created something special in the ruins of the old Valoran library. They called it the Archive of Debts Remembered. It was a massive database documenting every act of selfless aid throughout galactic history, every species that had helped another, every sacrifice made for strangers. The goal was simple: make sure no one was ever forgotten again. Make sure that when a species needed help, others would remember what they had done in the past. The archive became popular almost immediately. Young people from across the galaxy traveled to Valora Prime to visit it. They wanted to learn about their own species' debts. They wanted to know who they owed and who owed them. Hanul stood in the main hall of the archive, watching visitors move through the displays. Theron joined her, his skin glowing with quiet satisfaction. "Do you think it will make a difference?" Hanul asked. "Do you think people will actually remember?" Theron smiled. "Look at them. They are young. They are angry that their governments forgot. They are demanding change. Yes, I think it will make a difference." He was right. Across the galaxy, younger generations were rising up, not with violence, but with demands that their leaders remember their debts. Several governments fell in peaceful protests led by citizens who refused to let gratitude die. The Galactic Council, which had stood aside during the Valoran crisis, found itself under intense pressure. Ambassador Dal Nim had been invited to address them, and the session was broadcast to over 200 worlds. Dal Nim stood before the assembled representatives and spoke calmly, but firmly. For 300 years, humanity thrived because the Valoran chose to act when they could have looked away. Last year we nearly lost them because too many of you made the opposite choice. We do not claim to be better than you. We are simply grateful, and that gratitude drove us to action. She paused, looking around the chamber at the faces of delegates from species both powerful and weak. The question you must answer now is this: what debts do you owe, and what will you do to repay them? Because the galaxy is watching. Your people are watching, and they will remember if you choose to forget. The speech was short but powerful. Within a month, the Galactic Council had passed the Valoran Accords. 127 species signed, promising mutual aid, refugee protection, and coordinated defense of vulnerable civilizations. The accords included something called the Humanity Clause, named specifically for the species that had catalyzed the change. It stated that any signatory who failed to honor its debts or protect those who had protected them would be expelled from all galactic institutions. Honor was no longer optional. It was policy. Engineer Hye Jin had become something of a celebrity. Her hybrid technology, combining human and Valoran designs, was revolutionary. She had established the Joint Innovation Institute on Valora Prime, and engineers from across the galaxy came to study and work there. Her motto was simple: technology built on gratitude lasts forever. The Institute was working on projects designed to help struggling civilizations. Better water purification, more efficient food production, medical technology that could be built with simple materials. Everything was shared freely, just as the Valoran had once shared their knowledge. One afternoon, Hye Jin received an unexpected visitor. A young Kryn engineer stood nervously at the entrance to her laboratory. He looked frightened, as if expecting to be turned away or attacked. I am Kryn, he said unnecessarily. I know my people tried to destroy you, but I watched the broadcasts of the battle. I saw what humanity did for the Valoran, and I cannot be part of the Dominion anymore. I want to learn. I want to help. Will you teach me? Hijin looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. Come in. Let me show you what we are working on. The Kryn Dominion was not doing well. After their defeat at Valora Prime, internal conflicts had erupted. Younger Kryn, exposed to broadcasts from the battle, questioned their society's values. A civil war had begun between those who clung to conquest and those who wanted something different. Humanity offered refuge to Kryn dissidents. Not because they had to, not because it was strategic, but because it was right. Even former enemies could be welcomed if they embraced different values. Matriarch Kale spent her days working with human historians to document Valoran philosophy. She was old, even by Valoran standards, but her mind was still sharp. Together with the humans, she wrote down the principles that had guided her people for millennia. They called it the Valoran Code. It was simple enough for a child to understand, but profound enough to build a civilization. Give freely to those in need. Ask nothing in return. Trust that your gift will be remembered. The code spread across the galaxy faster than any law or treaty. It was taught in schools, displayed in public squares, referenced in debates and discussions. It became a measuring stick for civilization itself. One evening, Kyle sat with Ambassador Dalneem in a garden that had been restored on the palace grounds. Both women were tired. Both had given years of their lives to building this new understanding between their species. Do you think it will last? Kale asked softly. This change? Or will the galaxy forget again in another generation? Dalneem was quiet for a moment, looking up at the stars. I think it will last. Because it is not built on laws or treaties. It is built on stories. The story of how your people saved mine. The story of how my people saved yours. Stories last longer than governments. Kale's skin glowed softly in the darkness. Then we have done something good. Something that will outlive us both. The first joint Valoran human colony ship launched a month later. On board were Valoran survivors and human volunteers going to build a new world together. The launch was broadcast across the galaxy, and billions watched as two species that had saved each other set out to create something new. Scholar Theron and Dr. Ha Newell stood together watching the ship climb into the sky. Theron spoke quietly. Do you think this is what my ancestors hoped for when they saved your species? Ha Newell smiled. No. I think they hoped for something exactly like this, just multiplied across the entire galaxy. And thanks to what humanity did, that is exactly what we are getting. Voros had taken on a new role. He traveled from world to world sharing his story. He spoke at universities and government assemblies. He told them about his cynicism, his belief that humanity would abandon the Valoran like everyone else had. And then he told them about the young soldier who had died saving him, about Commander Taehyun's sacrifice, about what real honor looked like. His message was simple but powerful. Gratitude and honor are not weaknesses. They are what make you strong. They are what make you civilized. Everywhere he went, people listened. Because his story was not about politics or strategy. It was about what it means to be good. And in a galaxy that had forgotten that lesson, people were hungry to remember. The galaxy was changing. Not overnight. Not completely. But slowly, steadily, species were beginning to remember their debts. They were beginning to act when others needed help. They were beginning to understand that civilization was not just about technology or power. It was about choosing to help those who cannot help themselves, and that choice, more than any weapon or treaty, would determine their future. 10 years after humanity arrived at Valora Prime, the galaxy looked different, not in obvious ways. The same species still controlled the same territories. The same corporations still traded the same goods. But something fundamental had shifted in how civilizations viewed each other. Admiral J1, now gray-haired and respected throughout the galaxy, commanded the Alliance Defense Fleet. It was a coalition force composed of ships from 50 different species, all committed to protecting vulnerable civilizations. The fleet operated under a simple mandate. Never again would a species that helped others face destruction alone. The flagship was named the UES Taehyun. Inside it was a memorial hall where the names of everyone who had died at Valora Prime were inscribed. Humans and Valoran together. Humans who had died for aliens, Valoran, who had died defending their world alongside their rescuers. Every new member of the Alliance visited that hall and learned the story. Valora Prime itself had been transformed. The population had tripled as Valoran from surviving colonies returned home. Young Valoran were being born again, their skin glowing bright with hope. They grew up learning both Valoran traditions and human values, creating something new. A hybrid culture that embodied the best of both species. Dr. Hanul had grown old. Her hair was white now. Her hands shook when she worked. But her mind was still sharp. She had just completed her life's work. A book called We Were Saved, So We Saved Them. It was a complete history of human-Valoran relations from first contact to the present day. The book became required reading in schools across the galaxy. Billions of young people learned the story. They learned that civilization exists because someone chose to help. They learned that debts of honor matter. They learned that gratitude is not just a feeling, but a call to action. Hanul's final chapter addressed future generations directly. Never forget that your civilization exists because someone chose to help you. And never forget that somewhere in the galaxy, someone needs you to make the same choice. When that moment comes, will you remember? Will you act? Or will you be like those who stood aside when others needed help? The choice will define not just your species, but the kind of galaxy we all live in. She dedicated the book to two people, Commander Taehyun and Matriarch Kale. Both had passed away the previous year within days of each other. Their final meeting had been private, but witnesses said they spent hours talking about hope, sacrifice, and the future they had helped build. The debt repayment movement, started by young activists, had achieved something remarkable. The Valoran Accords that had been signed years ago were now truly enforced. Species that failed to honor their obligations faced real consequences. More importantly, most species now wanted to honor those obligations. It had become a matter of pride. Engineer Hae Jin, now middle-aged and running the Galactic Engineering Corps, unveiled a monument on Earth. It stood in the center of New Sol, visible from space. A massive sculpture showing human and Valoran figures standing back to back, defending each other. The inscription was written in every known language. They saved us when they could have fled. We saved them because we could do no less. This is what civilization means. The monument became the most visited site on Earth. Parents brought their children there to teach them about debt, gratitude, and honor. Young couples proposed marriage in its shadow. Veterans gathered there on the anniversary of the Battle of Valora Prime, remembering their fallen comrades. Sentinel Voros, now truly old even by Valoran standards, attended the dedication of a memorial garden on Earth. The garden was filled with plants from both worlds, human and Valoran species growing together. He walked through it slowly, his skin still glowing despite his age. Ambassador Dalneem's granddaughter, a young diplomat named Minseo, walked with him. She had heard the stories her entire life, about the Battle of Valora Prime, about her grandmother's speech to the Galactic Council, about the day humanity proved that gratitude was real. What was it like? She asked Voros. When humanity arrived, Voros stopped walking and looked at her. I hated your people when you first came. I thought you would be like all the others, arriving too late, offering too little. But you taught me something I had forgotten. You taught me that some species remember, some species care. Your grandmother once asked me what the Valoran did to earn such loyalty. Do you know what I told her? Minseo shook her head. I told her that we gave you hope when we had every reason to despair, and that hope is worth more than all the treasure in the galaxy. Scholar Theron had become a professor at the joint Human-Valoran University. His most popular course was called The Day Humanity Arrived. Students had to register months in advance to get a seat. He taught them about the moment when human ships broke through the Kryn blockade, the disbelief among his people, the realization that they had not been forgotten. His conclusion never changed. The Valoran saved humanity because we believed species could be better. Humanity proved we were right, and in proving it, they inspired the galaxy to become what we always hoped it could be. A community built on gratitude, not greed. Then came the crisis that would test everything they had built. A species called the Caliph, previously unknown to the galactic community, sent out a desperate message. Their sun was going supernova. They had 4 billion people and no way to evacuate them. They needed help immediately. The Galactic Council met to discuss the crisis. The arguments were familiar. Too expensive. Too difficult. Too dangerous. What if the rescue efforts fail? What if we commit resources and lose them? The Caliph were strangers. They had never helped anyone. Why should anyone help them? Admiral J1 stood before the council. He was older now, tired, but his voice was still strong. He spoke 3 words. Remember Valora Prime. The chamber fell silent. Those 3 words carried the weight of everything that had happened. The sacrifice, the courage, the choice to honor a debt when it would have been easier to walk away. One by one, species representatives stood and committed resources. Ships, personnel, supplies. Over 80 species contributed to what became the largest rescue operation in galactic history. Humanity led the effort, but they were not alone. For 6 weeks, the combined fleet worked around the clock. They evacuated cities. They transported billions of refugees to new worlds provided by allied species. When the Caliph's sun finally exploded, every single person had been saved. The Caliph Elder approached Admiral J1 after the evacuation was complete. His people were safe on their new homeworld, tired and traumatized but alive. Why? The Elder asked. You did not know us. We have nothing to offer you. We can never repay this debt, J1 smiled. It was a sad smile because he was thinking of Tai Hyun, thinking of all the people who had died at Valora Prime. But it was also a proud smile. 300 years ago, he said, another species said the same thing to us. But they gave us something precious, a chance to survive. Today we give you the same. And someday, when you are strong again and another species needs help, you will give them that chance. That is how we repay the debt, by passing it forward. The story ends on Earth at the Velarin Memorial. A young human girl named Jiwoo stands before the monument with her grandfather. He is a veteran of Valora Prime, one of the survivors of that desperate battle. Grandpa, Jiwoo asks, why is this monument so important? Her grandfather kneels down beside her. His old hands, scarred from that long-ago battle, point to the figures on the monument. Once, when humanity faced extinction, aliens we had never met arrived and saved us. They asked for nothing in return. 300 years later, we found them dying, and we repaid that debt. But we did something else, too. We reminded the galaxy what it means to be grateful, to be honorable, to be civilized. Did we change the galaxy? Jiwoo asks. Her grandfather smiles. No, little one. We reminded the galaxy what it should have been all along, and that reminder will last forever. He takes her hand and they walk through the memorial garden. Around them, people from 100 different species move quietly, each here to remember, to honor, to learn. Above them, ships move through the sky. Human ships and Velarin ships and ships from species all across the galaxy. They are trading, traveling, living their lives, but they are also remembering what they owe to each other, remembering that civilization is not just about being strong or smart or powerful. Civilization is about choosing to help when you could walk away, about honoring debts when it would be easier to forget, about being grateful for what others gave you and passing that gift forward to those who need it now. The galaxy had learned that lesson. It had taken a desperate battle. It had cost thousands of lives. But the lesson had been learned. On 1,000 worlds, parents tell their children the story of humanity and the Valoran. How one species saved another asking nothing. How that saved species never forgot. How they returned centuries later to repay that debt. How their example reminded everyone else of their own debts, their own obligations, their own choices. The story has become legend, but it is a legend based on truth. A truth about what makes civilization worth having. A truth about gratitude and honor and the courage to act when others need you. And that truth, forged in the fires of battle above a dying world, has rewritten the destiny of the galaxy itself, not through conquest, not through domination,